Welcome to episode 18 of the Deficient Vegans Podcast. I'm the Muscle Deficient Vegan here with the Protein Deficient Vegan. Do you want to say hi?
Hi.
Hi. So today we're going to be doing an intro to resistance training. Resistance training is just when you work out your muscles with some sort of resistance against them. That can be something like weights or your body weight. It's just something where your muscle has to push against some extra resistance. So you're not just moving your arms in the air. You're actually doing something with them that involves some sort of weight. It's really good and beginner friendly because you can start where you are. In the case of body weight things, you can start with body weight. In the case of things where you want to load it with some kind of external weight, you can start with basically 0 pounds, half a pound, and just move all the way up to hundreds of pounds over time. So a couple of the benefits of resistance training. First of all, why do we even want to do this? The most common one that people are probably aware of is that it builds muscle, right? So it'll build your muscle size, build your muscle strength. Overall, when people say they want to get toned, a lot of times what they really mean is they just want a little more muscle mass inside their body that's a little more visible, popping out. So resistance training is pretty much the only way to actually build the size and strength of the muscle. And, you know, some people will get strong naturally from doing like farm work or heavy labor. Technically, that's still resistance training. It's just not quite as programmed. You're just naturally working against resistance in your job all the time. So obviously that also builds muscle. Also, it can improve your bone density, especially in the case of vegans. It's really important because vegans can naturally have a lower bone mineral density just from our dietary differences with omnivores. I've actually saw a study recently where vegans who lift weights have a similar bone density to omnivores who lift weights. But if you compare vegans who don't lift weights to omnivores, vegans have a significantly lower bone density, and that can lead to fractures, osteoporosis, things like that. So,
that's interesting.
Yeah. So especially if you're vegan, you want to make sure you're doing some kind of resistance training to make sure you're kind of closing that gap on bone density.
I also heard that women are more susceptible to bone density issues.
Yeah, something to keep in mind. You try to, you don't need to do anything crazy. You don't need to be a power lifter or anything. Make sure you're doing some kind of resistance training to keep your bones strong. Also, it helps a lot with mobility. You're trying to, get up and down and get around, maybe playing with kids or pets on the floor. And maybe you're doing gardening, things like that.
Having sex.
Yeah, anything you need to be mobile for. Anyway, resistance training will help you a lot with your mobility and kind of keeping that as you go into old age, because that's one of the things that's easy to lose. If you don't use it, you lose it with mobility. So definitely something else to keep in mind and keep working on. And then just in general, having some muscular strength and combined with that mobility helps you just move yourself around more easily. So if you've got to do things in daily life, get up and down the stairs, get in and out of the car, move stuff around the house, whatever, just daily life things. This helps you a lot with that because you're a little stronger. You're a little more used to those movements. You won't injure yourself as easily. If you fall down, you can catch yourself a little more easily, things like that. So
changing out the water jug at work.
Yeah, that's a big one, right?
Yes. Ever since I've been able to do that, my confidence is through the roof. Like, I don't have to rely on a man to change out the water jug when I want water at work.
Yeah. And everybody just looks at you in awe.
Yeah, they're like, wow, a girl can lift a whole water jug? I mean, It's shocking.
Yeah. So, it's definitely good for legendary renown in situations like that as well.
I think they're only like 40-something pounds, but girls hardly ever change them.
You don't tell them that. You say, I think that's like a couple 100 pounds.
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Just do the math. The density of water is like 79, pounds per gallon. Everyone knows that.
Everybody knows.
Everybody knows that.
Those are some of the benefits. So resistance training, again, like I said, is when you use resistance against your muscles. Some of the ways that you can actually do that are with things like resistance bands, which if you're not familiar with that, is basically just a really big rubber band. And they come in different strengths, so they're a lot harder to stretch. So it's like heavier weight is basically what it's replicating there. And you just kind of, tie them to a pole or over a door frame or something. And then you can just work against the resistance bands as a really easy portable. They take up no space. They're no weight. You can put them in your pocket really and carry them around.
Am I the only one that's super paranoid about those? I am so freaked out when I use those. The whole time I'm like, it's going to smack me in the face. It's going to snap in half and it's going to hit me in the face and I'm going to die.
Yeah, I get a little nervous doing things when I'm pulling it towards my face. And I have had a couple of snap. None of it turned out horribly. I think a lot of the energy when it snaps goes away pretty quick. But it does feel pretty bad.
Yeah.
Maybe close your eyes. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm like stressed the whole time I use those things.
Yeah. And that's one reason to get better quality ones. They will all eventually wear out. And a lot of the times you'll see like they're really worn before they actually snap.
Yeah, they start getting like pale colored.
Right.
Yeah.
Just like a stretched balloon or something. But yeah, I mean, they do occasionally snap.
I like the knit ones. Those are mostly for like booty bands or whatever they call them.
I haven't even seen those.
Really?
Yeah.
We have some downstairs.
Yeah, I saw you use those. That is
Yeah.
interesting. I've never used one like that.
I like those because like those aren't gonna snap.
Right.
How the hell are those gonna snap? But yeah, like the rubber ones, those
Yeah.
kind of stress me out.
Yeah.
The tube ones don't worry me as much. It's mostly like the really like thin rubber ones.
Yeah, they have the rubber ones, which you just kind of usually hold and wrap around your hand. They have the tube ones, which you just mentioned, which actually have handles attached to the ends. All good options. Sometimes they might snap. Usually not a big deal, but I could see it snapping, hitting you in just the wrong place. Yeah, so resistance bands, really easy, lightweight option. Once you get into a program, you're not going to be able to do all the movements you want with resistance bands.
You can double, triple them up.
That's true. Yeah, you can do 2 at a time, but it gets a little hard, you know. And a resistance band. Another thing about a resistance band is it changes like the weight as you pull it. So if you're not standing the same distance away every time, the weight's a little different.
Yeah, it's also pretty hard to track progress because like depending on like where you hold it.
Yeah.
Like if you have it more stretched out, it's obviously going to be harder to pull. And then like what does medium mean? Heavy mean? Like I don't know what those mean.
Right.
It's like really hard. We have some that have like pounds on them.
Yeah.
But like specifically, what does that mean? That's what I've never known. I'm like, how far away do I need to stand for it to equate to 50 pounds? Like who the hell knows?
Yeah. And I'm sure there are ways to look that up. But yeah, it's really hard to really keep track of that during a program. But they are an option, and they're good if you're in a pinch or if you wanted to travel. And they're also really good for warm-ups, which is a lot of people use them for.
Yeah.
So you just tie it to something and kind of hold it and do some arm warm-ups or something like that.
Yeah, they're also good for like physical therapy. But like you said, travel like in a hotel room, that'd be a good option.
Yeah, if you've ever been to a physical therapist, they'll use these a lot. Yeah, so that's one option. The other ones that you're probably more familiar with, dumbbells and barbells. So dumbbells are the ones you hold in your hands, right? You do like curls with or whatever. You can do anything with them, but that's kind of what you think of.
Yeah.
And then a barbell is the big round plates on a long bar that you see people using for like bench press and squat and things like that. Dumbbells are good because they're a little more portable, but they're not quite as loadable. A lot of dumbbells, even the good ones, only go up to like 100 pounds. And there's a couple specialty ones that go a little higher than that. But barbells, you can pretty easily load up to nearly 1,000 pounds, depending on the barbell and the weight.
But like, who's really using a dumbbell for more than 100 pounds for the most part?
That's true, but a lot of people do like to do dumbbell bench press. But then it gets like, if it's heavier than 100 pounds, it's hard to get into place.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm just saying, if you're in a position where your bench press is like 400 pounds, dumbbells.
Yeah, you should be using a barbell anyway.
Yeah.
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 I don't know. I think the best investment I've ever made is the adjustable dumbbells. Those are so great.
Right.
They take up so much less space than having like all the dumbbell sets from like 5 to 50 pounds.
Absolutely. And if you get all the dumbbell sets, you got to have all the room for them. And they're also pretty expensive. Like the adjustable dumbbells are expensive as a set.
Yeah.
But they're not really as expensive as having an entire set of normal dumbbells. So,
and there's just the one,
right.
you know?
Yeah.
And you can move between them really easily. I don't know.
Yeah, there's several different types out there. They've all got their pros and cons, but in general, I'd say if you were trying to do a home gym, adjustable dumbbells is probably one of the first major purchases I would make. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Which one is your favorite that you've used?
I really like the power blocks, but they're a little slow to switch around, and I've got a couple complaints about the way it gets caught on your shorts.
Yeah.
So I think I liked the Bowflex better as far as the form factor, but the Bowflex also had the issue where they were the same length no matter what weight it was, and they're a little awkward.
Yeah,
in general.
they're really bulky.
I've seen some other ones I think I would like more, but I can't really justify buying them when I've already got a set that works really good.
Yeah.
I think the new bells look really nice. It kind of looks like a normal dumbbell most of the time. But the power blocks have been fine. I have minor complaints.
My issue with most of them is that the handles are way too big for like female hands, or like I think I just have naturally like smaller grip.
Yeah. So
the only ones that like I can actually hold on to without like basically dropping when I go up in weight are the power block, the small ones. They have like a small set that goes to like 32.
Yeah.
Which doesn't do everything, but like I can at least hold it.
Right, yeah, it's got a better grip. And they come with a contoured grip, and on mine I swapped the contoured grip out just for a knurled steel grip. Yeah. Which is a little better for the heavier weights. So they've got some good options. I've had
so much trouble holding those Bowflex ones because the grip on that is like massive.
I didn't like the grip on the Bowflex also because not only was the grip huge, but it would also give under heavier weights. So if I was doing heavy rows or something, I'd be able to like squeeze it, which felt really weird.
Yeah.
I just prefer steel grips when they're an option. Yeah, adjustable dumbbells, awesome. And then barbells obviously are great for lots of heavy exercises like squats, bench, stuff like that.
Ooh, and we got rainbow plates.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a deal, I think, last Black Friday and got some, I think they were calling them Spectrum, but basically, it's like a rainbow abstract weight plates to load on the barbell. They look pretty cool in person.
Pretty.
Yeah. I think I made a joke on Instagram about like, if you want to spend a lot of money on weights, at least get the pretty ones to appease your significant other. It seemed to work pretty well.
Yes, you can justify anything if it's pretty.
Yeah, the gym floor is pretty.
Yeah.
Colorful benches and stuff. You just walk down there, it's
nice.
An explosion of color, and you don't even think about all these.
That's right. I see no price tags.
The next option is like a machine. This is usually going to be at the gym, right? Like you might be able to get one for your home gym, but they're really expensive.
Tonal.
Yeah, tonal is actually pretty good.
Tonal's pretty cool.
Yeah. So loaded machines, usually the machines at the gym are for one specific movement. So it's like a bench press machine or a shoulder press machine.
Yeah, or like a tricep machine.
Yeah. And cable machines count in this. A tonal is a cable machine, which is just basically 2 cables. You can swap out a bunch of different attachments for the handle pieces, and you can do a whole lot of different exercises with a cable machine. So those are really good too.
Yeah. I like the tonal for upper body stuff. I think it's a little challenging for anything lower body.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's like pretty hard to do much lower body with the tonal.
Yeah. Mainly because lower body is big muscles and you need big weight, but also because it's really awkward to do.
Yeah, the setup's just awkward. Like I definitely prefer like gym machines.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Also, another one is medicine balls. People use medicine balls a lot for functional movement type stuff. So
a lot of ab workouts.
Yeah. A lot of ab stuff. You can do like where you're throwing it at a wall, or you can just do crunches while you're holding a medicine ball, a lot of little stuff like that. But that's a way to get extra weight.
Yeah.
You can also you can do a weighted vest, ankle weights, arm weights, a lot of different things like that. And then, of course, just if you're not talking about extra weights, just body weight is a reasonable way to do resistance training. You don't actually need any weight, so you just do movements in a way that use your body weight to add that load to the muscle.
Yeah, like lunges and squats and you can definitely get pretty good.
Push-ups are a really common example. Pull-ups, things like that.
True.
And so also with the resistance training, there's a little bit of terminology that you might read when you start looking into this. So we're just going to go over a couple of the kind of vocab or introduction to resistance training. So a big one is sets. And we'll do them in combination. There's sets and reps. Reps means repetitions. So if you think like you grab a dumbbell to do curls, you do 10 curls, like you just move your arm up and down 10 times. That's 10 repetitions. And so if you're doing 10 repetitions, you might want to take a break and then do another 10 repetitions. And that second time you do it is called the second set. So typically, if you're following a program, it's going to be like do 3 sets of 10 repetitions.
Yeah.
So you're going to see sets and reps extremely commonly if you're looking at any kind of resistance training program.
Yeah, and sometimes you'll see like 10 times 3.
Yeah, it'll be like 10x.
Yeah.
And that means 10 reps for 3 sets. You also see rest periods. So what that means is how much time you just recover in between your sets. So if you see 10 times 3, you do 10 reps, 3 sets, and then typical is like a minute to 2 minutes between sets. So you just rest for 60 seconds after you do your 10 curls, and then you start your other 10 curls. Yep. And then muscle groups is something you'll see, and you might see your muscle group as like arms, and that could mean bicep and tricep and shoulders, or sometimes shoulders aren't included. You might see a muscle group that's like your back, and then that's a lot of different things. If your muscle group is legs, that might be like quads and hamstrings and calves and all that together. So typically the muscles are grouped together in that way, just so you can visualize, because ideally you want to do exercises for every part of your body, right, that has major muscles. So it's just so you can say, okay, I've covered my legs and my arms and my back and my chest and like my core, abs, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's just so you can say, okay, I've checked all the boxes on all these different muscle groups. So I know that I've hit in some way all the major muscles in my body. So you'll see that. And then another big one for resistance training is something called progressive overload. So that sounds a little technical, but really all it means is try to do a little more next time than you did this time. And that's how you kind of really build the strength and the size in your muscles. So it can be you did more weight than last time, or you did more reps than last time, or you did more sets, or sometimes it's even like I didn't rest as long between sets. So there are a lot of ways to progress in this way. The standard one is just like add a little weight. So if you squat, let's say you do squats twice a week, as an example. As a beginner, you might just try adding 5 pounds each day, assuming you hit your goal, right? If your goal is like 10 reps for 3 sets, if you got that on day 1, then on day 3 or day 5 or whatever, when you go to do your squats again, you might just try that same thing with an extra 5 pounds on the barbell.
And it's a little different for like smaller muscles.
Yeah, definitely.
So like if you're doing bicep curls or something, and you're doing like 3 sets of 10 reps, maybe like on the next day you try to do 11 reps.
Yep, exactly. And you can also do sets. So if you got 10 reps, 3 sets, 12 reps next time. Like you were saying with the small muscles, you can't really add weight very quickly.
Yeah.
So
it's really hard to even add reps. Some of them are really slow to progress on.
Yeah, they are slow, but it'll work for a long time, especially as a beginner. You can do this basically just in a straight way without having to think too much about how to handle special situations for probably a year, maybe even more in a lot of cases. So you can just keep adding weight and trying to hit it. And if you don't quite hit it, just try the same thing again next week and you'll probably hit it. Like as a beginner, your muscles are going to get stronger really fast. So you'll be able to progress with, especially the bigger muscles, for a very long time right off the bat. So that's kind of the main way to progress your strength and muscle size.
And by bigger muscles, you mean like legs and back kind of?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, like arms are a little harder to do.
Yeah, shoulders and arms are a little more tricky. You'll still be able to progress the same way for a long time. It's just going to be much smaller increments. Like you're going to be adding, like you said, maybe 1 rep, 2 reps, something like that. And then you'll probably go through a couple of weeks adding a couple reps and then eventually be able to move up in weight and you kind of start the process over.
Yeah, but you're never going to move up in weight like you would with squats, like 5 pounds. It's oh, you added 2 pounds after a month.
Yeah, you're curling 200 pounds by the end of the year. No, that's not going to happen. But yeah, the same theory works, but it's going to apply a little differently to every muscle group. And then eventually, once you kind of hit a part in that progression where you're, we call it a plateau, where basically you've been trying to increase for a couple of weeks and you're not quite increasing, you'll have to get into some strategies around what we call deloading, which is like you lower the weight a little bit below what you've been working on to give your muscle a little time to recover. And then you eventually work back up and you'll break through what you were stuck on before.
Yeah. And can't you do things with like shifting how many reps you're doing? Like, for instance, if you're targeting like 10 to 12 reps, can't you like go down to like 8 to 10 reps for a little bit to try to like break through that?
Yeah, go down to 8 to 10 reps with a little bit
heavier weight.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to handle it, and you'll respond a little differently to each one. But you won't really have to worry about that until you start hitting some hard plateaus, at least several months into a beginner program. Cool. So that's the basic idea for resistance training. So now we can talk about how do you know what you're actually trying to achieve when you're doing a resistance training program. So we want to talk about setting an actual goal. So there's a couple of different goals you can have with resistance training. One, if you're thinking about like a bodybuilder, it would be muscle size, which technically is referred to as hypertrophy, but that really just means like how big physically the muscle looks. Right. So that's some people's goal. That tends to be your goal if you want like the visual, aspect of muscles. Right. But you could also focus on muscle strength, which it is related to muscle size. But if you focus on one or the other, you're going to get that result a little more. So you can actually grow quite a bit of strength without growing the actual size to an extreme degree.
Yeah, and these goals are more driven around how many reps you're doing, right?
Yeah, more or less, yeah. And, rest periods and the actual movement, exercises you're doing and stuff like that. But yeah, typically you're doing less reps if you're focusing on strength and more reps and more volume in general overall if you're doing muscle size.
Less reps, higher weight if you're focused on strength.
Right.
And more reps, lower rate if you're focused on visually.
Right. Yeah, for strength, you're really focusing on like doing your 1 rep max a lot and things like that.
So like powerlifting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Powerlifting, you think of strength as powerlifting and then muscle size as bodybuilding typically. Yeah. And also your goal, if you're not really focused on either one of those in specific, your goal could just be like fat loss, in which case it doesn't necessarily matter like really which program you follow, as long as you do something consistently and you make progress overall. And then you could just be, I don't really have a particular goal. I just want to be in the gym, working on my general fitness.
Yeah.
So that's another one where it doesn't really matter what program you choose to do. And you can even rotate programs quite a bit. You just want to be in there, lifting, making progress in some way.
I guess here's maybe a good time to mention, like, when do you know if you should move up in reps or like change your weight? That's when like you physically can't lift anymore. Like you're to a point of failure or like maybe a rep beneath that.
Yeah.
Right. So for instance, if you're trying to look lean or whatever, you wouldn't want to just use 5-pound dumbbells and do infinite curls. It's going to take a ton of time to get the results that you want. And you would have to do hundreds of reps. Right. So go to 15 pounds and do 12. Or if you can't do 12, if you can do 10, and then that's when you fail. You literally can't lift that up anymore.
Yeah.
That's when you know you're done.
Right. Yeah, and there's a couple of technical things like your rate of perceived exertion and how many reps you think you could have done after you failed, and we call it reps in reserve. But in general, you just want to try to keep the intensity up. Is probably the best way to encapsulate that. So like you want to do your set and make sure your set was hard and you were near the point where
your form is still good.
Yeah, definitely always want to make sure the form is still good.
Yeah, and some exercises you can do point of failure, like bicep curls. Like you can, if you can't lift anymore, like obviously you've reached failure, but like obviously you wouldn't want to do point of failure on like a chest press where you don't have someone that's like a bench press where someone's not really like going to be able to catch that. Like most times you wouldn't want to go to like, I'm completely failed.
Yeah. And also just on that point a little bit, they've seen in some studies that there's not a big difference between literally physically failing and being 1 or 2 reps short of failure.
Yeah.
So if you're on a risky exercise, like you were saying, like a bench press, you definitely shouldn't push it if it's going to be a risk to your safety. Safety first,
Yeah. And I think like once you do it a few times, you can kind of figure out like, what does that feel like when your arms are like about to give out?
Yeah.
Like you get the hang of like what that ends up feeling like.
Yeah, it takes a long time to understand. And a lot of the time people underestimate themselves. So they think they're going to fail way before they actually fail. So they've done studies where it's like, okay, tell us how many reps you feel like you were going to be able to do. And then they like have you in a safe environment. They just say, go literally until you physically cannot do anymore. And people end up doing a lot more reps than they think they can if you're actually pushed to a physical failure. So you get used to how that feels over time.
Yeah. And honestly, gym machines are like a really good one for the most part to go to failure.
Yeah.
Because you're usually in a safe position and you're just pushing away from whatever that position is.
Yep.
So like when you fail, you just end up back. You know what I mean?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And so while it's important to keep these goals in mind, just so you kind of know where you're going and where you know where your program might evolve into, if you're just starting out as a beginner, it doesn't necessarily matter which goal you start with because you're going to get almost the same progress out of either of them because your muscles as an actual beginner are going to respond in both size and strength pretty aggressively. So there's no set timeline for when am I not a beginner, but somewhere around the 1 to 2 year mark of consistent exercise, you'll probably be in more of what they call an intermediate phase, which is where you would start tailoring your training probably towards like powerlifting or bodybuilding or some other specific goal.
So like, how does that work? Say like 5 years ago, I lifted weights for 2 years and then I haven't lifted for 4 years. Am I now a beginner again? You
would be a beginner again at the beginning. But they've seen that your muscles kind of have, a quote unquote memory.
Yeah.
So you're going to regain, especially if it was only 5 years ago, you're going to regain a lot of that a lot faster than you did the first time around. So let's say you were in the quote unquote beginner phase, right? For 2 years before, you probably only be in that beginner phase for like 8 months. So your muscles will like readapt because they still have a lot of extra cells and stuff you built in there before. So it'll be a lot quicker progress. But yeah, I mean, if you're untrained, you're untrained. So you will technically be in that beginner stage again. Cool. So next, just some general tips and kind of pitfalls to avoid when you're doing resistance training. Number one is you want to make sure you're doing some kind of warm-ups, especially as you get into your late 20s, early 30s, and definitely beyond that.
Yeah. So like warm up with cardio and then maybe some dynamic stretching.
Yeah, this is good for injury prevention because if you just go in cold and start doing, heavy squats or something, you're probably going to have a bad time. So you want to be really careful with that. There's a quote I heard. It was, if you don't have time to warm up, you don't have time to work out, which is kind of a good mindset to keep in mind because a lot of people will go in and be like, oh, I'm in a rush. I don't have time to really do these warm up sets today, but I want to get my workout in. I mean, that's, statistics is going to catch up to you eventually and you're going to have a bad day. Yeah. And that's going to put you several weeks behind on your workouts.
Especially with back stuff.
Yeah.
I'm always so scared about back stuff.
Yeah, you got to be careful. So, but it's pretty easy to pull a muscle or maybe even tear a muscle. Yeah. If you're doing something like a bench press is really common. You got to be really careful.
Move the wrong way and now you're out for several weeks.
Yeah. So you can do a general warm up with something like an elliptical or a rower, maybe just 5 to 10 minutes when you first get in the gym to warm up your body, get your temperature up a little bit. Your muscles are a little more pliable and things like that. But then also as you go to do your more major exercises, you would just do lighter sets at the beginning to warm yourself up for that particular exercise. So again, if you're going to do squats in your typical squat, It's like, let's just say it's 100 pounds, right? I always actually start squats with a warm-up set of just the empty bar.
Yeah.
Jay Cutler's a popular bodybuilder. He calls them like feel sets. So you just kind of get the empty bar and just like do a couple reps with it to make sure your body, like nothing is like hurting in a weird way with just the movement itself. And then there's a bunch of different protocols for like warm-up percentage-wise, but you can kind of just feel it out. Like I'm going to throw 20 pounds on the bar and try a couple more sets, make sure it still feels good. And then just kind of build up, maybe just not like nothing extensive, just like a little warm-up set or two before you do your actual, what we call working sets, which is actually the weight you were planning to lift that day.
Yeah. And I think you don't really need to do that with like everything. This is more of like large, heavy lifts. Like it wouldn't be like tricep push downs or anything like that, right?
I mean, maybe if you're, it depends on how heavy your stuff is. Like if you're to a tricep push down that's like 100 pounds, maybe you do a 50-pound one first or something, but you kind of play it by ear. You can kind of feel the stuff where you're like, ooh, I wish I would have warmed up a little bit before I did that. And you kind of just add it to your routine going forward.
Yeah.
But yeah, curls are something you probably wouldn't really do any warm-ups unless you were doing crazy heavy curls. But definitely always with something like we call them, compound exercises, like big squats, bench press, stuff like that.
Multiple muscle groups involved.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Make sure you don't have something slightly tweaked before you squat 400 pounds.
Yeah. You don't want to be in the bottom of the squat and then realize, oh, my calf is cramping or my back is tweaked or whatever. So yeah, it's always a good idea just to do a couple of warm-up sets for the bigger exercises. You also always want to try to prioritize your form, especially as a beginner. And form is just like the way that you do the movement. Make sure you're doing it properly. Your body's in the right position. You're doing it in a controlled way. You're not just blasting through it, bouncing off your chest on a bench press. Or bouncing out of the bottom of a squat, something like that.
Which is where tempo fits into, right?
Right. Yeah. Tempo is good, which is where you have a set number of seconds that you're doing each part of the movement.
Yeah. That's a good way to learn. I actually really like tempo because it allows me to lift less and feel the same.
Yeah, definitely. In general, doing lighter weight with good form is way preferable to doing a heavier weight with bad form because you're more likely to get hurt. And you can learn form for the different movements. Obviously, you can get a coach or a personal trainer or something, but you can also learn a lot on your own. You can watch form videos on YouTube, read some books. There are some books, like the Starting Strength has a barbell book that talks about some barbell movements and stuff like that. But there's books, all kinds of bodybuilding books that'll show you how to do movement. And typically a good way is just, if you're watching videos, try to pick out a couple what are called cues, which is just kind of a mental reminder for each exercise. Like in squat, there's a couple cues like, keep your chest up. And there's one I always liked in squat, which is like pretend there's a string attached to your butt and that's what you're getting pulled up by, just to make sure your hip and your shoulders and kind of stuff are going up at the same pace. So each exercise will have a couple of cues like that are good to keep in mind as you go through the movement. And especially as a beginner, I'd say the most important thing if you're learning a new movement is just to focus on form really, heavily for probably the first couple months that you're doing a new movement, because you don't want to get to a point where you're progressing in the weight, but you've been doing it with sloppy form. And now you end up doing like a really heavy bench press with crappy form. And it's going to be really hard to go back and untrain that. And you're going to give yourself a higher chance of injury. You can also, if you're working on this, take your phone and record yourself doing the lifts. And then you can just review the video and you can see for yourself, like, oh, I'm a little uneven when I do this exercise, or like my back's bent a lot more than I thought it was, some stuff like that.
But if you're taking a video in a gym, ask other people around you if they're okay with it. Because like people that come in with tripods and like you feel like you're on their video the whole time, I hate those people.
Yeah, and don't be that person that's like gets mad at somebody for walking across your camera screen if you're in a public gym. Like it's gonna happen. Like just do what
you're in a public gym.
Right. So anyway, yeah, there's definitely some etiquette if you're in a public gym for the camera thing. Just don't be a dick in general.
Yeah.
There's also some apps. I think one's called OnForm. I can't remember what the other one is called, but it'll basically like draw angle lines on your videos while you're doing your lifts so you can see the angle of your back, like for a squat or something like that. So you can kind of make sure it's consistent and in the right place. So you don't really need to do something that technical, but if you're, kind of nerdy and you like to see stuff like that, there are options for that. Cool. And then even if you think form, it's probably a good idea to take a video maybe every 6 months just to make sure you haven't fallen into some bad habits or something like that. The next tip is just don't do too much too soon, especially if you're going into a new program or just maybe some new exercises individually. You really want to start out, again, focus on the form, just start out with light weights. There's some stuff like if I start out a new movement for the first week or two, I might even start with like the lowest weight I can and then maybe progress in the middle of the workout or whatever. Like just to make sure like, okay, I know how to do this movement. I'm comfortable with it. Now I'll start adding the weights. Like I'm not losing a lot of time if I just want to make sure I'm perfecting it. Always start lighter than you think you need to start. You can always increase it later. Again, we really want to try to avoid injury. So anything that can keep us from tweaking a muscle or something and being out of the gym entirely for a couple months is what we want to aim for. So just start a little lighter than you think. And then if you come and you say, oh, well, that workout was way too easy, you can increase it pretty substantially next time. But if you're just starting out, just start lighter than you think you should. And then as far as things like outside of the actual gym, while you're doing your workout, you want to keep your fundamentals solid. So those are things like your sleep, your just general rest outside of sleep. So make sure you're not doing a bunch of workouts and then going gardening and then going to play in your sport and then going to your physical labor job and just going in a continuous cycle of that. Like you need to make sure you're, resting appropriately. Make sure that your nutrition's on point. You don't want to put all that work in the gym and then, you're not getting in your protein or you're not, eating the appropriate number of calories and all your hard physical work isn't optimized or goes completely to waste because your diet's all jacked up. And you're not going to get very far if you're not focused on like the sleep and the nutrition and things like that. The muscle actually responds and grows on the rest days.
Oh, that's interesting.
So you do your work in the gym, but then, if your sleep's jacked up and your nutrition's jacked up, like your muscle is not going to be able to recover the way it's supposed to and grow. So I saw somebody actually, they call their rest days muscle growing days, just so they remember like these days are important too, even if I'm not in the gym. So I think that was pretty cool. And then lastly, you want to focus on your consistency and also your tracking to make sure you're being consistent. The best routine is the one you will stick to. People say a lot. There are a lot of things that might be like the perfect routine for the goal you want. But if it's something you hate or something you're not going to do on a regular basis, that's not going to be a very good routine for you.
Yeah. Like I fucking hate squats.
Yeah.
Like my form, I cannot get my form right. And I no longer care. I just am not a squat person. I don't do squats.
Yeah, and to the point where, like, if you start a new program and you see squats are in it, you're just not going to do the whole workout.
Oh, yeah. It, like, completely demoralizes me when I see squats. Like, it just makes me mad.
And I've got some stuff like that, too, for sure. Like, I kind of hate split squats. I've been doing them a lot more lately. But that's one of those things where it's like, oh, man, I'm going to dread this workout.
Yeah.
But as long as there's only maybe one of those things in there, I'm okay. But, yeah, there are definitely things where it's like, okay, I'm doing this program. I don't really like this program.
Yeah.
So I'm going to, like, skip this day and skip that day. And eventually you're skipping a bunch of days, which screws up all your progress.
And there are enough different, like, exercises that, like, I can find replacements for squats. Even if it takes 2 exercises, I'd prefer that over doing squats. And I feel like that about, like, I don't know, like, bent over rows.
Yeah.
I just hate those.
I love those.
I hate those so much, but there's like other ways to do rows.
Yeah.
Like there are infinite ways to do rows that do the same exact thing. And I'd rather just do that.
Yeah.
Than like suffer through a thing I hate.
Right. And there's no reason not to swap it out. I mean, your muscle, your back doesn't really know if you're doing a bent over row or a cable row or whatever to a certain degree. So definitely just make a program or use a program that you really like. If you hate some stuff in it, swap it out and just number one priority, pick something you're actually going to stick to because that's the most important thing for your results. Your results require consistency with resistance training. So even if you're doing something you like, if you're only doing it once a week, you might not progress at all. You're going to have really slow progress. To a certain degree, the more volume during the week, the more results you get. So if you're not consistent with your workouts, your results are really going to suffer. That's just how the muscles work and how they respond.
And you're going to be doing so many different exercises. There's no way you're going to remember what weight you were at. So you really need to track it.
Yeah.
I like the Strong app.
Yeah, me too.
It's free and you can track like what you did, how many reps you did, what weights you did.
Yeah, and if you're an Apple person, the Strong app on the watch is really good. I pretty much use my watch exclusively to track my workouts these days. I think there's another app called Heavy, Hevy, that people are using now. It's very similar to Strong, but I still like Strong better. And there's a whole lot of other one-offs.
You can also write it down.
Yeah, I used to use, when I very first started lifting, I used a small notebook that I just literally wrote and took with me every day to the gym. I really liked that actually. But it's just easier to keep track of it in digital and I can see my best and stuff. So yeah, whatever way you want to do it, just make sure you track. And I would also recommend, after your workout, you track like how hard was it? That way, kind of next time, how much am I going to increase the weights on this thing and this thing and this thing? So you can just kind of keep track over time to make sure you're progressing and you know what you were doing. So yeah, if you're not measuring it, you can't really manage it. So you just want to make sure you're tracking it in some kind of way. Plus, it's just kind of cool to see your progress over time.
Yeah.
It's really motivating.
Yeah, I like the Strong app because it'll tell you like if you've hit a new like PR
Yeah.
or whatever. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, that's a really good feature. It's just like, oh, I did my workout today. I lifted, tens of thousands of pounds and I hit 3 PRs. That's awesome. Yeah.
Feels good. You can take a little screenshot of it.
Yeah. Cool. You will occasionally plateau, even if you're being consistent, you'll hit a point where it's like, I can't really progress right now. Maybe you have to go into the deloading thing like we were talking about, but that's totally normal, right? Like plateaus are part of the process. It shouldn't be considered a failure or you're not progressing or anything like that. You're going to hit plateaus if you're doing it properly, and you'll just have to, manage it, and you will break through the plateau. Like it's literally part of the muscle building process.
Yeah. And there's some stuff that you'll plateau almost immediately. Like the lateral raise is like incredibly hard to progress on.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Lateral raise will take you, you probably only add 10 pounds to it, maybe your entire lifting. Also, even at the highest levels, like professional powerlifters will go like an entire year just to add maybe 10 to 20 pounds to one of their lifts. Like their plateau is just like the end result eventually. Obviously when you hit your like actual genetic maximum and stuff.
Yeah.
But even as you're working up to that, plateaus are a very common part of the process. Cool. So if you're trying to find a program, again, there are a ton of them out there. I do have a couple recommended beginner programs for resistance training. The one I actually started with way back in the day is something called Starting Strength. It mostly focuses on like squat, deadlift, bench press, overhead press, and it does power cleans. A lot of people will substitute the rows for the power cleans. I know the guy who made the program isn't a huge fan of that, but I think he's kind of accepted it at this point. But yeah, so that's a really good one. It just as you progress over time, it's like 3 sets of 5. It's a strength program specifically, so not really for muscle size, but again, as a beginner, you're going to grow muscle size too. There's another one called Strong Lifts that's really similar to Starting Strength, but it's typically 5 sets instead of 3 sets. But there's a really good app for Strong Lifts. There's a good benefit there. You can basically just install the Strong Lifts app, start as a bare beginner, and just follow exactly what the app tells you for 2 years, and you'll have great progress with just strength specifically again. Something a little less like strength focused is the P90X series of workouts.
I actually love the P90X.
Yeah.
So from the strength perspective, they have like a back and bicep one, and then they have like an arms one that has like shoulders, bis, and tris, and then they have like a chest and back.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know. That's what I actually started on, and I really like it. They have like, I think they're on P90X3 or something. There's like a few different varieties of them.
Yeah, and those are really approachable because those other 2 programs I just mentioned are almost exclusively barbell programs.
Yeah, these are all dumbbells.
Yeah, P90X is like dumbbells and maybe
and they do resistant bands. Yeah,
body weight.
They usually have like one person on there that's showing you a modified version, like whether that's with resistant band or whatever.
Yeah.
So like literally anyone can do it. And they have like, they show you like really strong dudes, but then they have like people that are more beginner types.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not really beginner types. So they're like obviously in very good shape.
Yeah.
But yeah, it feels like more approachable.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think those are more focused on like hypertrophy, like higher reps.
Yeah.
Than the kind of the ones that you mentioned. So
yeah, definitely. And I've seen, a couple of the P90X workouts that I've seen. They look really
I've
good.
made you watch them.
Yeah.
I really like them. Like whenever I get in a rut, I'm like, I'm just going to go back to doing the P90X ones.
Yeah, they look fun. And I'll put the links to all these programs in the show notes just so you can kind of get an easy access to them. I don't know if we can link directly to P90X workouts.
No, you have to be, I think, subscribed to Beachbody, but you can buy like the actual DVDs and stuff. Or you can like subscribe to Beachbody and just watch them, digitally stream them or whatever.
Yeah.
But I have like the original old CDs, and you can probably find them at a flea market or like
eBay.
Goodwill probably has them.
Yeah, that's one of the good things. Like, even if it's a couple decades old, your muscles still build the same way. Like,
yeah.
It's not really
I remember showing you the original one, and it was like, oh yeah, I mean, this is like pretty much still how we do it.
Yeah,
so
I mean, what would change really? So
yeah.
No, that's a good option. And it's, again, like I said, really beginner friendly, very approachable. I would say if you're not at a commercial gym and you're trying to work out at home, P90X is probably a good go-to for beginner routine.
Yeah. And if you're going to do the Beachbody program, like they have so many, like if you end up buying the subscription, which I've had for like a long time, because I just randomly will pick videos and stuff, but like there are so many videos. Like they also have like yoga and all kinds of other stuff. Like I think it's like one of those things that's like, if you're going to spend money on something, like it's a good one to have.
Yeah, I think we were talking about before, they even have like stretching videos and stuff.
Yeah, they've got like a ton of stuff. They have like boxing programs, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, so...
we don't sell Beachbody, by the way.
No. No. Or, like I said, you probably just go find old DVDs on eBay for the easiest way to get access to these.
They're probably on YouTube also. I don't know.
Maybe. And then just to recap, so some of the important things you want to do as a beginner, getting into the kind of an introduction into resistance training, set a high level goal. Just have that visualized, even if, you're not really doing a workout for that goal right away. Pick a routine. Again, the best routine is the one you're going to stick to. We got a bunch of options, a bunch of other options online. Do your routine consistently and track your progress. And then make sure that you're making it a little bit harder on yourself every time for that progressive overload. Because, if you just do 5-pound curls you could do 5-pound curls 3 days a week for a year. You're not really going to get any stronger. You're basically just like cardio at that point.
And I think this note is more for girls just because the media has brainwashed us into thinking that we should only be curling 5-pound weights. And I think all women and girls need to know that you can do way more than that.
Yeah.
And you're not going to turn into super massive manly muscles. That doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
It will never happen overnight. So for girls, lift more than you think you would lift,
I think female bodybuilders would be insulted by the concept that you could accidentally grow huge muscles.
Right, exactly. They work their whole lives to get to where they are.
Yeah, so also make sure you get your rest, nutrition, and sleep in order. Those are, I would say, just as important as the workout itself, really, because your body does a lot of recovery and muscle building on those off days, and sleep itself is huge. So definitely make sure you have that in order. And then just in general, your results are going to take time. There are programs that are 12-week programs, and you'll make, pretty decent progress. You'll probably feel a lot better, drop a little bit of weight if that's your goal. But overall, this is a multi-year, journey, probably really lifetime, but even to see a drastic change, I would say would take a year at least. Yeah. And then you kind of go from there. So I wouldn't expect I'm going to go to the gym for a month or 2 months and I'm going to look entirely different or whatever. It's really kind of a long-term thing.
Yeah. Which is actually a good point on the P90X thing, because they always show you these crazy 90-day transformations.
Yeah.
And it's yeah, maybe you'll have something like that, but probably you won't have something crazy like that in 3 months.
Yeah. And if you I'm going to use weight loss as an example just because it's probably the common one that people use for advertising. But in 3 months, at most, you're probably going to lose 30 pounds. So that's going to be a pretty decent visual difference depending on your body weight, but it's not going to be anything life-changing in 3 months. It's going to take time just to be realistic. So.
And even that's extreme. That's if you do literally everything right. And a lot of these programs are you're working out 7 days a week, which will eventually probably lead to some burnout. So
not a great point.
Yeah. Maybe start out kind of small if you're really quite new to it.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out on Instagram or any of the other ways that you want to contact us. All of our contact information is in the show notes as well. And then if you like the podcast and you want to hear more, don't forget to follow or subscribe depending on where you listen. We talk about both fitness and nutrition, and we have special topics in nutrition for vegans when we get into that topic. You can also leave a rating or review of the podcast and share it with your friends to help us out. So I think that's everything. You want to say bye?
Bye.
Bye, everybody.